Hello, everyone, and welcome. We will be starting in a couple of minutes here. We'll just wait for everybody to sign on. Thank you so much for joining us here today for our Will Career Development webinar on emotional intelligence for leaders. And as we are waiting for these few minutes, we'd love to hear where you're signing on from. We know we have people joining us here from all over the country, even the US and other parts of the world. So from Bangalore, from Halifax, Nova Scotia. Hi, Amy. Hi, Jennifer from Houston, Texas. Hi, Stephanie. Vancouver, UAE, Calgary, Vancouver, Airdrie, Brindy, Edmonton, Cochrane. Hi. Hi, everyone. Great to hear that. Welcome.
Oh, I see someone from Bigger, Saskatchewan. That's where my husband was born.
Denver. Hi, Melissa. Hi, everyone. Well, I think we can begin now. Thank you so much for joining us here today. Welcome, everyone. And we are here for our Career Development Emotional Intelligence for Leaders. Before we get started, please utilize the Zoom Q&A to ask us questions. It's the box on the bottom right-hand corner. And that also this speaker series will be recorded and uploaded to our Will video pages. The Women in Leadership Foundation acknowledges that our head office operations is located within the traditional and unceded territory of the Okanagan Syilx people, and we recognize, honor, and respect the presence of all Indigenous people, past, present, and future. So I'm Maya Canigan. I'm the founder and president of Women in Leadership. And here at Will, we're advancing women in leadership and celebrating the contributions that women have made in the private and public sectors. And we're building a community of leadership. We have chapters in Victoria, Vancouver, Okanagan, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Toronto, US, Ottawa, Montreal, and the Northwest Territories. So please visit womeninleadership.ca to learn more and sign up for our newsletter. Thank you to our major funding partner, the Government of Canada, and our national partners, CGI, IBM, and IG Wealth Management for your important support. And now it is an honor to introduce today's speaker. She is the president of Elevate Executive Coaching and the chair of our new Will Saskatchewan chapter, Kerry Schwabius. Kerry is a certified executive coach accredited with the International Coaching Federation, ICF. Before becoming an executive coach, Kerry spent more than 20 years in corporate communications, helping executive teams communicate with stakeholders. And during this time, she was a messenger, sometimes translator, and advisor for leaders. And this led her to the field of leadership as a leader herself, then empowering others to become leaders. Led her to complete a Master's of Arts in Leadership and a graduate certificate in executive coaching at Royal Roads University in Victoria, BC. She also holds accreditations in emotional intelligence, change management, communications, and team building. Today, Kerry helps leaders become more confident and effective, resulting in increased personal performance, better employee engagement and effectiveness, and stronger business results. Kerry has a genuine desire to make a positive change in the world, working with clients and as the chair of the board of directors of City Kids Regina. Welcome, Kerry.
Thank you, Maya. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for joining us today. I thought I would kick this off. So I stole this off of the most recent Women in Leadership newsletter, because when I read it, I thought, oh, this is exactly what we're talking about here when it comes to leadership, because leadership is about people, and people are emotional and complex and sometimes unpredictable. And emotional intelligence is a skill that you really need when you are in a leadership role. So I thought this was a great quote to start us off with today. And thank you for that. So what are we going to talk about today? Well, we're going to talk about emotional intelligence. I'm going to tell you what it is, why it's so important for leaders, and then we're going to take a look at the EQI 2.0 model. So there are different models and assessments used for emotional intelligence, but the one that I use is EQI. So I'll show you a little bit about that. That has 5 areas of emotional intelligence and 15 subskills that go in there that make up those 5 areas. And then we're going to spend a little time talking about how to strengthen emotional intelligence, because you can do that. So, what is emotional intelligence? It is a set of emotional and social skills that influence how we see ourselves, how we express ourselves, how we develop and maintain relationships with other people, how we cope with challenges and make decisions, and then how we use emotional information in an effective and meaningful way. So that's the definition of emotional intelligence. So here you see the difference between emotional intelligence and intellectual intelligence. So intellectual is really the logical, the rational, the reasoning. Emotional intelligence is more about perception, relationships with other people, self-awareness, motivation. IQ tends to stay fairly static throughout your life, whereas EQ can grow. And in fact, studies showed that EQ generally increases with age. So that idea of wisdom, that's growing EQ. I wanted to, because I find this very interesting, globally. So there's a study that was done by a company called 6 Seconds, and they studied 200,000 people across 160 countries, and they found that in general, EQ is fairly consistent all over the world. So it doesn't matter where you are or what culture you're in, emotional intelligence is kind of relatively the same all over the world. Another interesting finding is that over the past decade or so, emotional intelligence levels have decreased for some reason. So that's kind of interesting. This next slide here, this one shows you the value of emotional intelligence. So people with higher emotional intelligence have greater levels of effectiveness, stronger, more productive relationships, a greater sense of well-being, and a higher quality of life. And here's where it looks a little different. So in North America, for example, people with higher emotional intelligence feel 8.2 times greater effectiveness, greater well-being, those things. So your level of emotional intelligence positively impacts these things, no matter where you are in the world. Even in the Middle East, where you see it's the lowest, it still increases your impact. The other thing from these studies that I found interesting was the difference between men and women. And overall, when you look at the overall scores, they are fairly consistent. There is not a lot of difference between men and women. However, when you start to dig into some of those composite scales in different areas, and the 15 areas, you'll find that women may be stronger in some areas and men in other areas. So for example, women may be stronger in emotional expression and men might be stronger in self-regard. So the difference overall is negligible, but when you dig into different areas, there's some difference, which is not really a surprise. So why is this important for leaders? I have some statistics here about emotional intelligence and leadership specifically. So people with average IQ scores, so average, not super smart, but average IQ scores, outperform those with high EQs. No, wait, let me think about this. People with average high IQ, well, okay, yes, average will outperform people with high IQs 70% of the time if they have high EQ. So being smart doesn't mean emotional intelligence and doesn't mean higher performance. Emotional intelligence impacts higher performance. And think about that, because you're constantly interacting with people. And so your ability to relate to people, to understand your own emotions, express them effectively, makes you more effective. Another statistic here, 90% of top performers score high on emotional intelligence. So the majority of people who are in that high performance have high emotional intelligence. Pepsi did a study. Here's the 15 to 40% higher revenues. This is surprising. Pepsi did a study of their managers and found that managers with high emotional intelligence outperformed yearly revenue targets by 15 to 20%, where those with low EQ underperformed at that same level. So low EQ to high EQ, big difference in terms of your ability to generate revenues. A Gallup study found that employees who had managers with high EQs were 4 times more likely to stay. In fact, studies also show that people will stay at a company for less pay if they have a good boss. And research also shows that when there's a leader who has high emotional intelligence, they see better employee motivation, and of course, better team cohesion and effectiveness. So high EQ has not just, the intangible side of effectiveness, but also that financial side of effectiveness. All right, so here is the EQI 2.0 model. You'll see these different areas, self-perception, expression, and I'm going to go through all those 5 areas. And then, like I said before, there's 15 subsections within those that make up those 5 areas. And this isn't the only model of emotional intelligence. There's one called the Profile of Emotional Competence. There's the Trait Emotional Intelligence Questionnaire. There's something called Wong's Emotional Intelligence Scale. Those are just a few, but I wanted you to know that this is not the be all end all, but it is a very good model, and the one that we're going to talk about today. So that first area is about self-perception. So this is how you see yourself. It also can be referred to as inner self. It's your ability to recognize emotions when they show up and how they're different. How do you distinguish between different feelings? Are you confident in pursuing your goals? So that's the self-actualization there. But are these goals meaningful to you? Are you focused on your own growth? So that's the inner self. How do I see myself? The next area is how do I express myself? So am I able to tell people what I want, what I need? Do I communicate openly about what's going on with me, how I'm feeling, which takes some courage? Assertiveness, can I stand up for myself? And do I stand up for others? And can I do this independently? So how I show up in the world, how do I express myself in the world? The third area is interpersonal. So it's not just about how I see myself or how I show up, but it's also how do I interact with people? What are the people skills that I have? When I say I'm going to do something, do I do it? Do I inspire trust? Pardon me. Trust is huge, huge in leadership. So do I show up in a way that people will trust me? It's also about social responsibility. So how do I behave in a manner that is better for the community as a whole and not just myself? Okay, so we've talked about how do I see myself? How do I show myself or how to express myself? And then how do I interact with others? The next area is, I'm going to talk about empathy. I forgot about that. So empathy is about so social responsibility and interacting with other people. There's also this idea of empathy. And I brought this out as an extra sub point because I think it's so important, especially for our leaders. And I wanted to talk a little bit about what empathy is. It's really about creating a space where people feel seen and heard and understood. And I love this quote from Alfred Adler. And there are 3 different types of empathy. So there's emotional empathy, where we feel what they feel. There's cognitive empathy, where we understand why somebody feels the way they feel or how they could feel that way. And then there's compassionate empathy, and that's where we act on what we feel. So I'll give you an example here. Imagine you have an employee and they're dealing with a difficult customer, and customer comes in and starts screaming and yelling at them. And you see that she's getting very upset and frazzled. And so you step in and you deal with the customer and send him on his way. And then you look at your employee and she's close to tears. She's just shaken by this experience. So your emotional empathetic response might be, I see this has really bothered you. Your cognitive empathetic response would be, I understand how that would really be upsetting. And then your compassionate empathetic response would be, take 10 minutes, take a break, go collect yourself. So that is part of that interpersonal. Empathy is a big piece of that. So I wanted to just pull that out and talk a little bit more about that. Okay, decision making. So this is all about, how do I use emotional information to solve problems? Do I understand how my emotions impact my decisions? So, when you're really upset about something and you want to respond right away, that's a decision you make in the moment of that emotion. So how are my emotions impacting my decisions, my behaviors? How can I take emotions and logic and balance those things when I'm making decisions? So as a leader, you might be in a difficult position when we're talking about, the financials of your company or different things that your company has to do in order to continue to grow that might have impact on people. And so how do you take that logical side of things and also, that people side and the emotions involved in that and make good decisions? Recognizing bias. So this is interesting. And I want to tell you this story about bias that I read recently with regard to the pandemic. So we know that employees, probably 80% of employees, are wanting more flexibility as a result of COVID and their ability to work from home and prove that they were highly effective working from home. And so now they're saying, okay, we want more balance. We want more flexibility in terms of working from home. And what this study that I read also found was that women more than men want more of this balance, which makes total sense. Women still, after all these years, still have primary responsibility at home when it comes to the children and taking care of the home. And so they want more of this balance. Well, now what's going to happen in the workplaces? If there's an unconscious bias for somebody to be physically present, does that mean that women are going to lose out on opportunities for promotion because they have this preference for spending more time at home? And what impact does that have overall in terms of women in leadership roles? So recognizing bias, for example, how do we know that, okay, wait, I have a preference for this or that, it's unconscious, I'm not aware of it. So how do I recognize that? And resisting acting on impulse. So we sometimes do this. Somebody says something and you react to it. How do you take that moment to absorb and then, I'm using an earbud here, to absorb that information, and then rather than react to it, make the choice to respond to it. So that's how you use emotional information to make decisions. And then I want to talk a little bit about stress management. So how do we use and manage our emotions in stress? How do we become flexible? How do we cope when things are changing? How did we cope in these last, almost 2 years now of COVID-19? And how are we resilient? So I wanted to show you this bell curve here on stress management, because we know that really low stress, if you have no stress whatsoever, it's not a great place to be. It's kind of boring. In this chart, they call it bore out. A little bit of moderate stress is okay, like things are okay. I can manage this. I'm not growing. I'm not changing or learning, and things are okay. That's your comfort zone. Your optimal performance is when you have some stress. And when I talk about stress, I talk about that it's stretching you to grow, to learn, to be better. And that's where you want to be. When you get past that, you start to feel this strain. And then when you're receiving a high amount of stress, that's when you start to see burnout. So how do you keep yourself in that middle top of the bell curve there and that optimal performance when it comes to stress? All right. So I want you to use the Q&A box, and I want you to share what has maybe stood out for you, or a new idea that you haven't heard before, or any questions that you might have had as I've gone through the first half of this emotional intelligence piece. Quiet. Okay, so either everything is crystal clear, or everybody is busy answering emails. Okay. All right, then I'm going to move on. So how do we strengthen? Oh, wait, we got a QA. Here we go. Okay, thanks, Kimberly. You like the bell curve. Yes, growth is essential for sure. Yeah. I find, I don't, and I've heard this is common, but I think after 3 years in a job, I start to get a little bored and I want something new. I want to try something new or learn something new. So I have a tendency to either switch roles or go back to school for something or take a new program, because it's about a 3 year when I start to feel like, I'm not feeling like I'm moving up that curve very well. Does the increased use of technology impact the way we interact with people and therefore impact EQ? That is a fantastic question. Absolutely. How could it not? I think, thank you, Sandra, for that question. Now, I don't have any studies specifically tied to this, but I think that what we see in our children in particular are higher levels of anxiety. And one of the causes is that continued interaction with social media and people's ability to anonymously or that freedom to interact on social media where there's no, you don't have to do it face to face. And sometimes it's easier to be mean or to be disrespectful when you don't have to look someone in the face and do it. So I think that social media has certainly had an impact on how people express themselves in the world. That's a great question, Sandra. I also think too that in this time of the pandemic, that we've had a lot of interaction on Zoom and whatnot, and that takes away sometimes some of the body language that we're used to seeing when we're communicating with people that give us some cues about how they're feeling and what they're saying. However, when it comes to leadership, I think when you take that extra effort to connect with people, whether it's on Zoom or in person, but make that extra effort to have those conversations and to, continue to check in with your team and see how everybody's doing and have those one-on-one connections, you can still be a very effective leader. So it takes a little more effort because it's not like you're walking past their office and saying, hey, how you doing? You have to make the effort to, schedule some time on Zoom, but it can be done. Higher EQ was reflected on employee retention, knowing that if I feel and understand my employees, it gives them a comfortable environment. Yeah. So at the end of the day, people want to be seen, heard, and understood. Everybody wants to feel like they are valuable, that what they are bringing when they come to work is valued, and that they're important. And that if they feel that way, you're going to see higher employee retention. Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much for those questions. We're going to jump into how do I strengthen my EQ? Okay, so the first one is self-awareness and mindfulness. Self-awareness is really, really important when it comes to leadership. You have to understand the impact that you have on the people around you. There's a whole bunch of ways that you can increase your self-awareness. So there's assessments, personality tests, there's the Myers-Briggs type indicator. Some of you might have done the DISC strength finder, all kinds of self-assessments. And what I find with those is, even if it doesn't tell me something new that I didn't already know about myself, it reminds me and brings awareness to, to my tendencies or how I might seem to other people. So they're always useful. I love doing those things. And it gives you such a nice refresher on how other people might see you and how that might impact your relationships with other people. It will show you if are you a micromanager? Do I feel the need to jump in and do everything because I want it done a certain way? Are you things? So there's this concept, the window and the mirror in leadership. And when things go well, the leader looks out the window to see who is to receive the accolades for things going well. And when things don't go well, the leader looks into the mirror to see who's responsible. So self-awareness and mindfulness. And this isn't about judgment. It's not about saying, I'm great or I'm terrible. I'm not good at this. I'm not good at that. It's just about being aware. This is the way it is. And now what am I going to do about it? So that's one way to strengthen EQ. Another way to strengthen EQ is to notice how emotion affects decision making. So I'll give you some examples here. Procrastinating is a big one. Putting off making a decision because you're dealing with the emotion of it. Do you avoid difficult conversations? So as a leader, you have to have difficult conversations sometimes. And how does your emotion or your discomfort with that affect your ability to have that conversation? So notice how your emotions are impacting your decision making and what you're doing. Focus on your strengths. I love this because when you focus on what you're good at, you feel more confident and you feel more powerful and you feel good about yourself. So imagine that you're making a change. I used this example this morning actually with one of my clients. So if I'm already good at, say, for example, skiing, I'm a great skier or a pretty good skier. So if I decide I'm going to be a fantastic skier, I'm going to kill these slalom hills, I'm going to go for it. And I work on that, I become better and better and better at it. And I feel great and I feel powerful and I'm awesome. If, on the other hand, I look at cooking and I'm a horrible, terrible cook, which is not true, by the way. I'm a very good cook, but just for the sake of example, I'm a terrible cook. So I think I have to be a better cook for my family. And I try and I try and I try, but it's just not a natural strength for me. And it's frustrating and I don't want to do it anymore. That's not sustainable. So when you focus on what you're already good at and you leverage those strengths, it's going to be more sustainable. You're going to feel better. You're going to be more effective. Okay, so focus on what you're good at. Allow yourself to be known. Okay, this can be scary for some people. Some people are super private. They don't want to share anything about themselves. And that's not a bad thing. It just is. But when you open up a little bit and you allow yourself to be a little bit vulnerable, you'll have better connections with people. And people will understand you better as well. And this can sometimes be hard. I worked with a woman once who was going through some personal challenges, and it was really impacting her. And it was obvious in the way that she showed up at work. You could tell she was under a lot of stress, and wasn't necessarily as patient or as kind with the people that worked for her, and the people that worked for her could see it. And I said to her, well, what if you tell them? You don't have to tell them what you're going through. You don't have to disclose all the nitty-gritty details. But if you tell them, look, I'm going through something and it's really impacting me, then you give those people the opportunity to show you empathy. It shows that you trust them with that information. And that builds relationship. So have the courage to allow yourself to be known. Same thing here. Choosing courage over comfort. When I talked about having those difficult conversations, so I think about providing an employee with some feedback, if it's not, super positive feedback. How do you have the courage to have that difficult conversation? And I think it starts with mindset. So when you approach that conversation thinking, this employee deserves to feel valued and successful at work. And that can only happen if they know where they can improve, where they can grow and be better. So I have to tell them where they can grow and be better so that they can have success. And then together as a team, we can have a success. So often you'll hear, somebody ask for feedback. Oh, how was it? Oh yeah, it was great. It was great. It's great. And they never give you anything specific. Well, that's not helpful. But it takes courage. It takes courage to say, look, I love this part of this, but you could have done this better, or I really was looking for more information about this, or having that specific feedback. So choosing courage over comfort and sharing over superficial. Self-care. Oh my gosh, I think this is one of the things that especially mothers have a really tough time with. So we are so busy taking care of everybody else. We're taking care of our spouse, we're taking care of our kids, we're taking care of our friends, our parents, our employees, we're taking care of everybody else, but we're not taking care of ourselves. And when we're not well rested, when we're not eating well, when we're not getting some exercise, we're not getting, time out just to be, and we're not feeling at our best, then there is no way that we can show up as our best for other people. So self-care is really important. And they say in the airplane, put your mask on first. Yes, you got to take care of yourself before you can give yourself to others. I always say you can't fill somebody else's cup from an empty vessel. So self-care is really important when it comes to emotional intelligence or any of that. And then finally, coaching is really effective in strengthening emotional intelligence. So when you do the EQI assessment, it's about a half-hour self-assessment, and you get a report. And it will give you an overall EQ score, and then it'll break it down into those 5 composite scales, and then even further into those 15 subscales. So you'll have an overall picture of emotional intelligence relative to other people. So as a coach, I sit down with people, we take a look at the report, we take a look at, what are the strengths that you really want to leverage? Where do you want to grow your emotional intelligence? And then we spend some time setting some goals and making some action plans to grow emotional intelligence. So what I've got here is a link to my calendar. I invite you to book a complimentary consultation if you're interested in emotional intelligence, you want to learn more about it, or you're interested in the assessment. Go ahead, use this link, book a meeting with me, and we can talk about that. A couple more things about this assessment in general. It is reliable and valid meaning that it is measuring emotional intelligence, what it's meant to measure, and reliable in that the results can be repeated over and over when the test is taken. There's 3 different kinds of reports that you get that you can access in regards to emotional intelligence. So the workplace report is kind of the basic report, but it gives you all the scores. It gives you a ton of information. Then there's also the leadership report. In the leadership report, it shows your scores in relation to other people in leadership roles, And it also gives you some suggestions and some insights in terms of how does your score impact your ability to lead others. And then if you're super brave, you can do the 360. The 360 is amazing in that it will help you to see things that you are not seeing. So it'll reveal some blind spots for you. This one, you get your peers, your manager, if you have one, and your direct reports. You choose who your raters are. They answer the exact same questions that you are answering, and you get the scores amalgamated, except for your manager. That's the only one that'll be separate, but those scores are averaged together so that you can see, for example, if you are, kind of in the mid-range in terms of self-regard, and your employees see you maybe lower than you see yourself, then you might think, okay, so what do I need to do to close that gap? So it's a really great report, lots of useful information. Here are some additional resources. So the first one is that's the organization that has the EQI assessment, and they have lots of resources on their page. There is another company called 6 Seconds. That's where I got the data, the international data on emotional intelligence. They have amazing resources, and their CEO actually has a lot of videos on YouTube that are really fantastic and pretty short, so that you can learn about all different areas of emotional intelligence. Positive Psychology is another good resource, and then Daniel Goleman as well has a lot of good information about emotional intelligence. So if you're looking for more, if you're that kind of person who likes to dig into a topic, these are some really great resources.
Kerry, we had
Yes.
a question. Oh, here's your email, or is that the email that you'd like people to email you about more information or booking?
Yeah, okay, so I will pop that up here. So that is my calendar link here. I wonder if I can pop it in the chat, and then you can just click on the link. So that will show you my calendar. Here we go. Copy. And everyone. Okay. So there it is. It's in the chat box. If you are interested, yeah, and then it's easy. You can book a time that works for you, and we can talk about that. And then there's my contact information. So I have my website there, Elevate Coaching. So I focus on leadership and women. It makes me crazy that we are so far away. I think it's like 150 years to equality for women, and that's not good enough for me. So I want to support women who want to be leaders and want to be more effective leaders. So I have a bi-weekly newsletter. I make it short and sweet because I know how busy everybody is, and I know I whip through newsletters and don't spend a whole lot of time, so I keep them very short. But you can sign up for that on my website as well. And reach out, email me if you want to learn more about emotional intelligence or coaching or any of that good stuff. Any other questions?
Do you see, Kerry, those questions? We had a question there from Kimberly. What would you recommend for tools to further the development of EQ?
So those websites that are on there, and this is recorded too. So if you want to access the recording, if you want to take a look at those links, those are great resources. And there's all kinds of suggestions and things you can do to improve emotional intelligence. I think I think coaching is a really highly effective way to do it because it's very personal. So it's not like you're in a group or you're an anonymous person reading an article or a book about how to do this. It focuses on you. It focuses on your strengths, on what you're trying to achieve, and you're leading different people. You're leading in different environments. It's coaching is so specific to you and your situation and what's going to help you be successful. So, that's the best way, most effective way, I think, for individual success. But there are so many resources out there that you can access.
And another question, any quick suggestions on how to overcome procrastinating? Yeah, I need help with that one.
Yeah. Okay, so there's the saying, eat the frog, which means you do that least desirable task first thing, eat the frog, just do it, get it over with. So then you can focus on the stuff that you enjoy more. Because the reason we put things off is because we don't really love doing them. So eat the frog, just do it. Yeah, that's tough one. Is coaching covered under benefits? I haven't seen any benefits programs that cover them. I have heard anecdotally that there might be some out there, but I haven't seen it myself. You can, however, if you work for somebody, you can get the organization to support coaching as professional development. And I do have some resources about the impact of coaching and the ROI of coaching in terms of all those things: employee retention, employee engagement, higher revenues, all of these good things that impact the bottom line. So coaching, if you take a look at financially for an organization, pays off huge dividends. I see Mint here has a question about how do I go about asking for feedback? So there's a number of ways to ask for feedback from other people, simply to ask them. So if you are specific about what you're looking for, I'm really wanting to grow in this area. Can you give me some specific feedback about what you observe or what you see that I could be doing more of, doing better? What should I stop doing? Those might be some specific questions you can ask feedback. What I find in leadership quite often, if you have a number of employees, sometimes they don't feel safe in responding honestly, or they don't feel comfortable in responding honestly. So there are a number of ways that you can give them the opportunity to provide feedback. You can do a 360 survey. So you can do that in this EQI 2.0 assessment. You can do that 360, but there's also other 360 tools, or you can create your own 360 tool if you are looking to look and get feedback on specific areas. The one thing that I would note here is that it has to be anonymous. So if you are doing that, it is helpful to get somebody else to collect that feedback and pull it all together for you and identify some general themes that you can work on. I have done with clients interviews with employees. So I've worked with the client and the manager to develop the questions that we're going to discuss, focusing on the areas that are important for that particular employee. And then I go to that person's employees and we have one-on-one interviews. And again, bring that information together so that we can take a look at themes so that it's all completely anonymous and makes it a little safer for employees to give feedback. So I hope that answered your question. Awesome. Okay, well, I am going to thank you for your time today, but Maya has a few things to say before we close off. And I just wanted to say I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to you. I thank you for giving me your time and attention today. And I just want to point out this painting behind me. It's called Strength Through Community Support. And that's why I've come to Women in Leadership, and I'm starting the Saskatchewan chapter because I really think that we can be stronger when we support each other. So thank you.
I love that, Kerry. Thank you so much. Such a great presentation, and I really loved, the ways to strengthen EQ, and really how it's all linked to having a better quality of life, and even generating greater revenues. So that's awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you to Dana Creighton for all your help with this event. And thank you to you all for joining us from all over the country, all over the globe. Be sure to stay connected through our newsletter and social media channels. And our next event is our open house on October 4th with Kerry. And we're building a will community in Saskatchewan, and we're very excited about that. So thanks so much again, and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye, everyone. Thanks so much, Kerry.
Thank you.